you very much for the warm welcome. I feel like we're in a time of, we all have to remember that we are human beings, even though we're mediated through these digital screens. So indeed, I'm Veronica Barron. I'm a Boston-based artist, and I work at I create visual and choreographic theater that really sits at the intersection of puppetry, dance, theater, and visual art. And my training and background and how I came to develop the practice that I have now began with a lot of work with just the human body, this choreographic approach to making theater. In the United States, theater is often thought of as a text-based thing, and the body is a little bit secondary, but the training that I did, I was really interested in the body used in a less everyday, less pedestrian way. I think that to me, it feels like as long as we're going to all show up in a theater together and see something, I personally like to make things that are not like what you would see in your daily life, although I also love theater that is like that as well. So I started with just a strong interest in making works of theater that, that I think actually are, we all know something about other realms than our daily lives. Like I often think about dreams as a way that, I think actually all of us have some points of reference for an imaginative landscape for what's possible with storytelling that is not literal linear storytelling. So I started from that, and then I found my way into the world of puppetry and dance theater from there. And now my practice spans all of them. So I just am gonna, keeping an eye on my time, I'd like to share my screen with you and show you a few images of the types of things I'm working on right now. So my current body of work is concerned a lot with delicate materials. Some of this I even didn't realize until I started drawing themes between. I've been doing a lot of work with shadow theater and fabric and cut glass and materials. In fact, this teacup piece came out of a kitchen rehearsal with my two collaborators on this project, a step dancer and a banjo player. And in fact, it came out of breaking a teacup in the kitchen and wanting to make something theatrical out of that. I think there's something very interesting to me about the strength and resilience of materials that also look fragile on stage. And what I've found in working with these materials over the last couple of years is that like you might think that if you pick up a piece of muslin fabric or cheesecloth or glass, you might think it would break easily. It actually doesn't. And so when you work with those objects on stage, you watch a person interact with these materials that look quite fragile, but that actually have quite a lot of heft to them. And I find that really interesting in this body of work that I've been working on over the last couple of years. Many of these images are from a creative research residency that I did in Montreal to develop a lot of this material. You'll see, again, things like sand and lace, these sort of impermanent, almost like they could just be balled up and thrown in the trash kinds of materials that are membranous, transparent. So this body of work, at least right now, has a working title of Be Clean When We Die. And there's a body of work including both me and several other dancers as well, with shadows layered onto it. It was supposed to receive a premiere that was unfortunately canceled by COVID, but it's being rescheduled for next season. So this is just some glimpses of the kinds of things that I've been working on lately. And then I am going to show you a couple of little excerpts as well. I find that because of coming into, one of the things I find interesting about puppetry as a form, a lot of the work that I do, it's an expansive definition of puppetry, right? Where there are some objects, but there's also me, the dancer, present with the object. You're not just seeing the objects. And one of the things I've realized that is most compelling to me about that realm is that you're working with an object, but you're also working with a human body. And so I think there's something very interesting to me about mapping what you do with your human body onto an object and sort of personalizing the object, making the object come alive, making the object feel imbued with life. And then I actually find it very interesting to go in the other direction as well, where you can take an object. There's a way that you can also work with your personal body that sort of depersonalizes a little bit. Like you can kind of treat your own body like a puppet to some extent. And I think there's something about that, the intimacy and distance that's present in both of those. Like I'm interested in working with my body and the bodies of other dancers and performers in a way that sometimes creates some distance and lets you see a human body, which I think we all map and we think we understand it, we see it. But actually, I think there's quite a lot of expressive possibility if you can create just a little bit of distance. You can set it askew just a little bit. And then similarly, like the material world is just like full of objects that have actually quite a lot of life in them. If you were to make the objects of the world a little bit more like a human, and a human a little bit more like an object of the world, I find that really delightful. So I'm going to just show you a couple of little clips here. So in this clip, this is from the work in progress that I mentioned, Be Clean When We Die. This was a showing. So I'm just going to show you a little clip of, this is an example of me working with both bodies and voice. So I wrote this song and I wrote it in a very kinesthetic way where like you'll hear my voice sort of like ring and flick. And then I'm also working with a piece of fabric that is being wrung out of water and flicked. And then that sound and that gesture of that, that cloth, it's present in the way that I'm using my voice in the song, and then it's present in the choreography and the percussive rhythm that I created for this ensemble piece. So let me know if you can't hear the sound, but I'm gonna go ahead and hit play here. To be alone, neither to be somebody else's own. Cross the blue mountains, how I would like to fly, but what would I do on the other side? How I would like to fly, but what would I do on the other side? I do not wish away to be able, neither to be somebody else's own. I am weary. Won't you carry me? I dread the day when I must marry thee. And that is my 10 minutes. Thank you so much. We are now open for, thanks, Dr. Lee. We are now open for questions. So if anyone has a question, jump on in there.
This is Dorothy from France. I was just going to ask, is that your voice?
It is.
It's beautiful. It has such a black spiritual feel to it, and with the washing, and but your voice is gorgeous.
Thank you. Thank you. That piece, the visual world of the piece, it came actually a lot out of looking into Domestic labor, I used to work as a historical tour guide as well. So actually a lot of research into domestic life in the 1700s and 1800s in North America. And a general, that and the other body of work I mentioned with the banjo player. I'm doing a lot of work these days working with Appalachian folk traditions from North America and bringing that into a theatrical setting.
Hi, this is Anisha. I'm in Niwot, Colorado. And I was interested in what you were saying about your work with puppets and a dancer. And I also do shadow puppets, mostly with students.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love doing them. Have you ever done anything where, because you kind of were saying something about personalizing the object? And sometimes, you know, and that's what the dancer does. And sometimes people actually objectify other people. And so I was wondering, have you ever done anything with that dancer, shadow puppets mostly, but even any other puppets, doing some kind of a dialogue or storytelling between the two?
You mean storytelling between like the human performer and the puppet?
Yes, yes.
I have. Yeah, I think my work doesn't tend to have dialogue explicitly in it, but I do actually have several pieces that are part of that longer piece that I mentioned where there's like a face on a shadow screen and then there's me interacting with the face. So it's so there's a sense of like what's happening for the puppet character on the screen, but then there's me breaking into the screen with my body and like putting my face in the screen and like singing directly to the character who's being manipulated by me on the screen. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting point you make about like what it is to objectify a person. And usually we think about that in a negative context, certainly. But I think there's something of like being, at least what I find interesting about a dialogue between a non-human object and a human performer. To me, it creates a certain kind of like we are the same in that moment, at least in the work that I'm doing right now. I'm leaning into that sense that like this object and me, like we are of equal footing. We have a rapport. We have a sameness of this flat image and also this whole human. Like we are both representing some piece of a true thing that is equally important on stage.
Yes, that's what I was wondering. So that's excellent. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. And do you have a website?
I do. It's veronicabarron.com.
Okay.
And then also I post a lot of my work in progress on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Very Brightly.
Very Brightly?
Yep. VERYBRIGHTLY.
And does Boston still have their first night?
Unfortunately, no. First Night was founded in Boston. I have actually, I've had wonderful performing experiences at First Night, but unfortunately, it's no longer happening.
Oh, bummer.
I know.
Yeah, that was excellent. I loved that.
I believe we're probably just about at our time here. Is that right, Dr. Lee?